morning, everybody. Thanks again for joining us. We may have a few other people sort of coming into the Zoom room here over the next couple of minutes, but just welcome you to our SCO Roundtable. We're really pleased that you've taken the time to join us this morning. And with that, I will turn it over to Patrick to kind of kick us off.
Thank you, Craig. Good morning, everyone. So, Craig, something I should have asked like 5 minutes ago. Do you have the deck?
No, but I'm sure if you emailed it to me, I'll bring it up right now.
Yeah, or I can. I think I have it on. So we just have a brief agenda. I'll just, as Craig does that, I'll let you do that, Craig. If you don't have it, let me know, and I'll
Nope,
share
I
some.
got it.
Okay. So, and I think that I may have just added a couple words that out when we get to this slide. I'm quickly going to stand aside here. So as Craig kind of loads that up, if you want to just go to slide 3, Craig, when you get there with our agenda, I will briefly go through what's on the agenda. So we're going to very soon here introduce and thank our facilitators and guests today. We thank all of you for being here. This being the second session that we're doing on supports coordinators and performance-based contracting. We had our initial kickoff session about a month ago on September 18th. We got a lot of feedback from everyone. So we wanted to revisit this, and we got some feedback from each of you that I'll get into in a moment. I did want to share just a brief review. One of the things, when we had done the meeting and scheduled it for September 18th, we heard from the ODP side that there was actually, we heard from ODP that some of the financial measures, pay for performance, the stabilization payments, obviously this is a new fee structure that's not going to be effective for several more months yet after we get into implementation January 1st, so the next fiscal year. But that's a lot of change. So we had some dialogue, and we started to maybe have some concerns that we needed to sort of do a financial review, bring some financial folks in. So we had actually reached out and interviewed a few people to provide that as a potential service. What I think we quickly learned last meeting was that most of you, and the SCOs, have done that, and you've kind of done that analysis. So I did report that back to Kristen. I had promised at the last meeting I would report back to her on some of the high-level findings. So that was certainly one of them. I reported to Kristen that, I didn't think that was really needed. It seemed as if everyone had kind of looked at that, and there is a remaining concern. That's really not going to be the focus of what we talk about today. We're really more concerned about making sure that you have access to information. I'm very pleased we're able to have Devin Spielman from ODP with us today to answer some questions. So it's really going to be a session, hopefully, for you. If you have any lingering questions with the deadline looming here a couple of weeks away to submit your information through the portal, that you have a chance to answer all your questions or have them answered so you can submit. So the other two things that I reported back to Kristen, I heard a lot both during the meeting and afterwards, and took notes to this effect that the List A versus List B activities, how that was going to be an impediment for billing purposes and cash flow, and also the HCSIS reporting. So particularly on HCSIS reporting, Kristen indicated, known issue. I think we had a discussion with Devin and Lauren House yesterday about some ticketing and some things as well. So these are some things we'll get into, but I just did want to start off with just a brief update on sort of dialogue back and forth with Kristen following the September 8th meeting. So Craig, if you want to go next slide, I do want to just acknowledge again, Devin, we'll let you kind of introduce yourself because I want to make sure you sort of set scope for your role and get a chance to introduce yourself to our members. Kate and Leslie are back. Again, thank you both. And thank all of you in the audience and who are joining us today to learn more. And I think this will be we'll see if it's a little bit more of a roll up your sleeve session. And obviously with Devin here, a good opportunity to get specific answers to some questions. So briefly, I just want to go through what we did last time in terms of polling. If you could advance the next slide, Craig. I'm not going to belabor this. If we need to revert back to it, it's something that Kate, Leslie, Devin can kind of take a look at if we want to look back at anything that you reported on from the last session. And the next slide, please, Craig. It's really just the feedback that you gave us, that you indicated that the session was helpful, and unanimously in both cases, you indicated that you were interested in meeting again. So we're happy to deliver that platform, bring everybody back here about a month later. And with that, I am now going to turn it over to Kate And Leslie and Devin, maybe we'll just ask you to kind of step in. I'll thank you personally. We'll let Kate and Leslie take it from here. But I would just like to give you a moment or two to introduce yourself. Thank you. And thanks again, everyone, for being here.
Thanks, Patrick. Yes, my name's Kate Barton. I'm the director of our ODP department at Service Coordination Unlimited, which is one of the smaller SCOs in the Pittsburgh region.
Leslie, I didn't get your audio real well, so I don't know if those I can see can raise your hand if that was an issue for you as well. And Devin, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for having me, inviting me to participate today. My name is Devin Spielman. I am the new division director for quality information and SEO programs at the Office of Developmental Programs. Those of you who are familiar with Jen Frager, I've taken over her position as of January of this year. So I'm still relatively new. I'm going to hold on to that card for as long as I can because there's so much to learn. And, this was like a crazy time to transition into this position. Prior to this, I was the SIS project manager for ODP since 2019. And before then, I was about 17 years working as a service director for a provider, IDA provider. So I am, thankful to be here today, and hopefully I can assist you. There's many topics, obviously, and I am not the subject matter expert of all of those topics. So there may be sometimes, questions will arise that I will have to take back to my colleagues, but, I'll certainly be able to get you an answer, with a very quick turnaround time if I don't have one for you today. So looking forward to the session.
Well, thanks, Devin. I think maybe, Craig, you and I, and Nancy Marie, I want to acknowledge being here also, parent perspective, advocate perspective. Thank you, Nancy, for joining us also. So please, as well as always, please provide your input and perspective on some of the questions. I think what I'd like to do, and then really stand down here, this slide shows a poll question, and we'll open the poll here in just a moment. If you've had a chance to take a glance at this slide, we really want to let folks who are joining us today identify of these performance areas which might be causing you kind of the greatest amount of pain and challenge right now. So thanks, Craig, for opening that. And then if you want to advance next slide, that polls up, you can see the question. We really kind of want to also ask you, just in kind of free form, major changes you have made in preparation. So if you don't mind writing something into the chat, the top item, we thought this could just be a good starting point to kind of get us going, get some information from you. And then particularly with Devin with us here today, any sort of technical questions that you have on documentation that has to be turned in for performance measure criteria. We just thought it would be a good way to sort of get a profile of the group who's here and some of the things that you're experiencing as we go down the home stretch here for your submissions. So at this point, Craig, whenever you want to display the results, when it looks like most people have had the opportunity to vote, you can close that and share the results. And if Kate, Devin, Leslie, you can't see the results, let us know. We'll call them out as well. So Craig, I'll turn it back to you to kind of close this and give us some of the results. It just looks like quality, and quality has a lot of areas. We'll point out, as it said on the slide, and it says on the answer as well, it includes the data integrity and the wellness sections, and we know that's a big performance area category. And it looks like that's leading the pack right now. So it looks like Craig has shared those results. Hopefully everybody can see. So I'll turn it back over to Kate, Leslie, and Devin.
Okay, so like Patrick was saying, it looks like it's quality and technology as well as workforce. I think these are all very fair issues to be having. I think they're some of our biggest challenges at SCU. In terms of technology, it's a lot of having to find the right systems or the right process in order to ensure that you're getting all of that data collection, which goes hand in hand with quality. And I know, Leslie, you were talking about this a little bit yesterday. about what your agency was trying to do to navigate that.
So basically, we're fortunate enough to have a system known as Welligent, and that is an information gathering electronic health record system. What we are trying to do is just figure out how do we allow that platform to, once we enter some information into it, get us back the data that we need. You know, I'm not sure that everyone has that ability. I will be honest, we're still doing a lot of, you know, basic paper, pencil, good old fashioned spreadsheet tracker for right now. So to say that we've mastered this yet, we have not, but we certainly have some things that we're trying to implement as far as technology.
Now, I know like with us as a smaller SCO, we don't necessarily have the resources of a much bigger agency who might have, you know, additional funding or a specific department dedicated just to this PBC process. I wasn't sure if there's anybody else, you know, in the chat or they want to speak up if that's a concern for you as a smaller agency, or is this kind of being seen across the board pretty universally? Okay, so it looks like, okay. So I'm just looking at the chat.
I'm seeing some workforce development, not really anything technology. Is there anyone that wants to share what your agency is doing in regards to technology for the rest of the group that may be helpful?
Or does anyone have any systems that they utilize that they feel is able to capture this information well? I know, like Leslie said, we're doing a lot of, you know, pencil to paper. I'm trying to maybe find the right system that really captures all of this properly and we can extract reports from ongoing. I wasn't sure if anyone had kind of found that sweet spot with a provider.
Or even use of the portal. Now that we have, you know,
Right.
the PCB portal, are folks finding that an easy thing to use? Have folks started to enter things into the portal as we approach the due date?
We've started entering stuff into the portal. I think the hardest part was getting how they want it saved. We spent time trying just to figure that out. It took 5 or 6 tries to like get exactly the underscores right and all of that. So we have started. It doesn't seem like, you know, everything needs to be in one document, obviously. So if you have 2 or 3 things, you need to like combine them, which wasn't too big of an issue. For billing, it's really complicated because like until you see what Hixus is going to allow us to do, it's hard to build something. And that's not going to be done until like January, if that date is even accurate. So how do you kind of start building a platform when you don't even know what you're going to be able to use out of Hixus?
Devin, do you want to share kind of what Lauren spoke with us about yesterday and the plan for Hixus and where we are?
Yeah, absolutely. So, right. You know, solutioning we're in the process of solutioning. We submitted our business requests into Hixus. We're trying to make it as simple as possible. You know, obviously we're using a legacy system and we can't make major drastic changes. So you're not going to see something that you're like, oh my goodness, like, you know, this is completely different. We've proposed that they change some of the drop downs so that we can capture the list A and list B activities. And instead of like assigning, you know, units, we're going to, you know, hopefully, potentially, I have to say potentially because we don't know how this is going to be solutioned. So I understand the difficulty everybody, you know, is up against. But ideally, you know, we'll have it so that, you know, like a 1 unit will be for a list A activity and a 1 unit for a B. And you'll know that you need 2 B units for that 1 month of billing for that list B activity. The service note extract report that you're all using for billing will also capture those A and B activities as well. But we're also, you know, keeping the system so that it can continue to track the times in the 15-minute units for those base funded individuals. So how it's going to look, I cannot for sure say. As far as your data submission for that performance measure, like, you don't necessarily need to know what it's going to look like as far as the HCSIS configuration. We just want you to focus on like what your organization's going to do to adapt to, you know, its internal policies. You know that you're going to have to train your SCs. What that looks like, not sure yet, but I promise it's not going to be a huge uptake. Make sure that your processes are aligning with the new methodology, with the monthly billing. We know that that's, you know, definitely, you know, proceeding in that direction. So, you know, think of like the steps that you need to get, knowing that there is going to be a change in the future. Talk about, you know, like training milestones, who's going to be in charge of what, and just make sure your targets are measurable. And like that is like just specifically, it's very general for this question. You do not have to be like super specific. And that, again, that is in relation to the admin 0.2 performance measure. So you just demonstrate, you know, thoughtful planning and readiness for the transition to the new payment methodology. So you don't necessarily have to know exactly what the HCSIS configuration is going to look like at this stage. But, you know, as soon as we solution it and get it out there, you know, we will get that information out to everybody as soon as possible.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Devin in regards to the changes with HCSIS? No, Kate, I don't see any in the chat. I don't know if you do or not.
I don't either. The only question that I have is, will ODP or the counties themselves be providing any trainings surrounding the new processes in HCSIS?
Yeah, Kate. We certainly will ensure that, you know, we get some general training out to everybody. Now, obviously, like internally, you have to develop your own for how it's going to work for your organization, but we absolutely will put out some training in relation to what the new enhancements will look like.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Can I ask real quick, if, as far as getting that data, like when you're doing the billing on a monthly basis, are you going, like right now, you can go in and see that you've billed X amount in 15-minute units. Are you going to be able to run a report or quickly see that you've billed for these customers even before you've run billing? Do you know?
Mike, I'm assuming like what you'd want to know is whether or not the individual, the billing's been satisfied for the individual prior to running the billing, correct? Okay, yeah.
Correct.
So we do have that in our business requirements as something that we would like them to scope for. Cost, you know, we don't know what that's going to look like yet. So I can't 100% say, yes, we will have that. But it is something that we have in mind, and we did put it in our BRs for them to scope and price for us. We did identify that is, you know, pretty significant. And, you know, we don't want people like having to manually track this. And we want SC supervisors to be able to go in and see what the SC's done, if the SC's not available, et cetera. So, you know, we are trying to incorporate that into our enhancements.
You're right. It would be nice to know, you know, later in the month where you stand with billing rather than, like you said, trying to manually figure out who you've billed for. You know, especially that piece is obviously going to be really important since it's not a 15-minute unit. It's, you know, the whole billing for that month for that, capture that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to keep track of A's and B's, that, you know, we get it. We understand. We want this to be easier, right? Obviously. We wanted to go away from the 15-minute unit chasing and make it easier, but we don't want to, you know, like I said, have to put on this additional layer of having to like manually track. So it's like I say, you know, it's been written in there. Hopefully we can make those enhancements. You know, we don't know what the system limitations are, the cost, et cetera, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, what we're seeing too is like it feels like, okay, we got to bill A and Bs, but really, are we focused on what the quality of the individual actually needs? So like, yeah, they might only have one A this month, but you know, or one B this month, but we can't like capture all the billing of that. And then other months they're going to have a lot more because that's where the crisis like comes. And then like our poor like SC only individuals that were only billing twice a year, some of those people are the ones that we are working with on a monthly basis, sometimes a weekly basis, because that is where we really need to put our time and our energy to make sure that their welfare is taken care of. But if you're only billing for them, you know, twice a year, are they going to fall to the wayside just because you're not going to be able to bill for them and you got to worry about getting someone others B in or A in just to make sure that you're billing? It just seems like we are going so far away from person-centered thinking with this A and B list. I don't know. It's just really kind of hard to wrap our heads around that aspect of the billing.
So Sarah, I like to think of it, I was not a sports coordinator. I was a case manager briefly, so a little bit, little understanding. And obviously, I work directly with sports coordinators quite often as a provider. But so if you look at the A and the B activities, like they're very easy, to obtain. And I think just going throughout your day and dealing with things that come about, you're going to hit those marks easily. As far as like your individuals who are SC services only, if you're dealing with them on a weekly basis because of their needs, then you need to have a conversation with the administrative entity to see if they, are standard TSM and only billing once a month, or potentially they're intensive TSM. Or I'm sorry, standard TSM and only billing, what are we doing, 2 times a year, or potentially intensive TSM. Because if you're meeting with them weekly and having to do a lot of intensive work with them, then perhaps they should be the intensive targeted support management.
Has there been any consideration that we could get like a partial payment for the list B activities? Because if the SC does one of them, you know, we would capture that billing, but to have to do 2, you might not. And I think it would also make the billing flow easier, because then as their notes would go in there, if they would at least get partial credit for that. If they ended up doing the second one, it would then be included and we'd get the whole payment for it. It might also make it easier for our internal systems that we track to make sure to submit that billing.
Yeah, Frank, I'm not exactly sure why. I know there was internal discussion about the partial payment for the Bs, and I know that they did land on not at this time. And I don't even know that it is open for a discussion. I guess after they see, how it pans out, then perhaps it could be something that's revisited. But I did take note of it here to discuss with Lauren.
And I think with that, Devin, I don't know if you can answer this or not. What is ODP basing what creates list A and what is in list B? Do we have an idea of where that came from? What
the list A activities are more, they're surrounded by life course, the ISP, monitoring. So they're the more intensive supports that, like, specifically the actual supports coordinator can do. The list B are more like administrative things, general updates. Now we do allow for the associate SC to do life course framework, but there is that one caveat that they have to be in the IDA field for a year and have the life course practitioners training. That is not required for SCs, just to clarify that as well. But yeah, it's just more, the A activities are very person-centered. Well, all of our activities are person-centered, but it's more intensive. And the B activities you'll see are just more like administrative, sending out mailings, responding to phone calls, scheduling things, etc.
So just a couple of things I'm seeing in the chat, and I know, Devin, you touched on this a little bit. about the SC only folks who might be eligible for the more intensive TSM, and that is defaulted to the county and the AEs. Can you go into a little bit more about like what their standards or criteria will be for
Yes.
those high ones?
Yeah, these folks are those who, they're standard TSM, MA eligible, not eligible for any of the waiver services, currently eligible for waiver services. And these are individuals who over 3 months, three out of 6 months have, intensive support needs. You're meeting with them weekly, it doesn't even have to be weekly, but you're meeting with them more frequently. You're doing a lot of work for them. It's just, it's more of a conversation, like it's just reaching out to the AE and saying, over these last 3 months, I've been, have your documentation, show exactly what it is that you're doing for the individual to assist them. And then basically it's just a matter of updating that, elevating them to the intensive TSM instead of the standard TSM.
Okay, sorry, two quick questions.
Yeah.
Just want to clarify. So I know it's 3 out of 6 months. Can it be any 3 months out of the year that they can shift over to the? Okay.
Yep.
And then for those
It
first
doesn't-
3 months, are we able to speak preemptively?
I'm sorry, what was that for the first
Oh,
3
I'm
months?
sorry.
No,
For the
I was
first
just going to
3
say it
months.
doesn't have to be 3 consecutive months either. It's just 3 months out of 6,
Out of
3 out of
6.
6 months. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. And then for that first 6-month period, are we preemptively allowed to be speaking with the AEs and saying, this is, or is it just when PBC really rolls out that then we can implement that?
Yeah, no, you mean prior to what? I'm sorry, Kate, can you explain that? You said
So
before.
when we're going into this shift into, let's just say it's a SC only, we're not sure if they're intensive or not, but we know internally that we work with this person every single week. We have a meeting with them. Is that a conversation that SEOs can be having with the AE preemptively, or is
Absolutely.
it? Okay, awesome.
Yep.
I would hope that we do get a little bit more guidance for those AE conversations, because each AE is different and some of us deal with multiple counties. And what happens is it's really easy to get along with one county, and sometimes it is not the same in the other county. So we would kind of hope that those guidelines to have those conversations, or what the AE is using as a guideline to determine if that individual is going to meet the intensive need, so that we know that we have, I hate to say it, but sometimes a leg to stand on when we have to go there and we have to put this before them and say that this is where we're looking to put the billing.
I will definitely make a note of that and see what we can provide for that. Just looking at the FAQ that they recently posted, I'm not sure, it just went up, so I'm not sure if y'all know that or not, but it is on the performance-based contracting website on my ODP. What's it say? There isn't much here, like you're saying. SEO is consistently performing activities listed in billing guidance, list A and B for intensive TSM for at least 3 out of 6 months. So basically what I just said, yeah. So what y'all are looking for is a bit more guidance, kind of something to hold AEs to as well. So you don't get that pushback is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, because we even see that, for some of even the smaller activities we do, whether it's even a critical revision or something, I mean, we get a lot of pushback on that,
Sure.
let alone when we're going to ask to increase the billing and where that would fall. So it would just be really helpful to us.
All right. I will certainly take note of that.
Okay. And it looks like Yvette asked if folks who are on EPUNs needing waiver, if they're able to be billed as intensive TSM. So I would think so long as they meet that consecutive, or not consecutive, but within the 6-month period, 3 months that they're doing intensive work.
Yes.
That those are probably going to be most of our folks who are going to be intensive, or those on that waiver track or transition period. And then it looks like there was also a question as to whether or not ODP is considering extending that 10/31 PBC portal close date, since there's still a good bit of clarification needed on a few things.
Unfortunately, this time I can't. There has been no talk about the extending it. Yeah.
Any other questions regarding this with Devin or for Leslie and I?
Kate and Leslie and Devin, it's Nancy. As a family member, the one number in the poll that struck me was 22%, almost a quarter of SCOs are concerned about workforce issues. And as you all know, because we talked about it yesterday, families are first of all, some families don't even know about performance-based contracting for sports coordination starting on January 1st. So for many families, this is going to be a huge surprise. Others know a little bit about it, but they certainly don't know a lot. But the families that do know about it, that I've been in touch with, are scared to death that they're going to lose their support coordinator that they've had a long-standing relationship with, especially families of folks with, complex chronic medical behavioral needs. They don't want to start with somebody brand new and have to go through years and years and years of, experiences with somebody new. And then there's also the families that I'm thinking about who are going to be coming into the system. And they're going to want to call, an SCO and get services from the closest SCO to their home. And they don't know it yet, but, that SCO may be closed. They may not be accepting new referrals, especially if they're dealing with some pretty significant workforce issues. Yesterday we heard that some pretty seasoned support coordinators are leaving the field or are thinking of leaving the field because they just don't have it within them now to deal with all these changes. I just saw in the chat where one SCO is hiring new SCs, which is great. But we also know that if you hire somebody, on October 15th, that person's not going to be ready to jump into the field for 6-9 months. So there's a huge learning curve. I'm just interested in hearing, I'm sure you are too, what some SCOs are doing right now to kind of stabilize the workforce that they have, and or what are their plans to hire more SCs.
Thank you. We talked yesterday, but I can share a little bit looking at, the importance of trying.
Leslie, we're having trouble hearing you.
No better.
That seemed a little better, Leslie.
That's okay.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think, our goal is to try to get those caseload sizes down to a more manageable number for SCs. We're looking at, just initially perhaps 45 cases. We have some SCs that sit well over 60 cases right now. So looking to hire for, more SCs to have those original caseloads drop. But I think one of the issues with that is we're going to bring people on now and teach them how to do things the unit way and how we're doing things in HCSIS now and get them up and running. And then in a few months, we're going to have to retrain their brains to do it a different way. So it kind of, it's something that we need to do, but it does present challenge for someone that's brand new to the system to have to learn 2 ways in really 6 months, basically. So we are, like I said, trying to plan for new hires, trying to not have to turn away any intakes that we get. We've not done that. That's something that we've chosen not to do. So I don't know if any other SCO can speak to what they've done or are trying to implement.
I think for us, we've really had some long-term SCs, and I have to say we are a little bit nervous about losing some of those long-term SCs because of the great amount of changes that are taking place, and they are just kind of tired. The other thing that we're always faced with also is the 1-to-7 supervisor to SC ratio. In these uncertain times of what our billing is going to look like, to hire another supervisor just to add 4 SC or 5 SC positions to pay for that supervisor in the uncertain terms of how we're looking at the billing to move forward, that's probably not going to be a reality. So, that's something that's been in place for such a long time. But as the system changes, maybe that is something that should change so that we don't have those tight constraints to hire somebody under that 1-to-7 ratio. The other thing is the associate SC position sounds great, but we're having a real hard time finding qualified SCs, let alone trying to find somebody that would want to do parts of the job for much less pay, or that they want to do it on a part-time basis and we can't fit them in. And then also for some of us, we have to prove that that associate SC is generating revenue to somewhat pay for their position. So without all of those things in place, some of those for us might be on pause. So we're just hoping that we can maintain the cases that we have, take some new intakes. Transfers would be difficult for us because at this point we would probably look to try to help and alleviate the system. So we would look to help those individuals that do not have a supports coordinator first over someone that wants to switch from another unit. So we have to look at that. Also, if they're base funded, did the other unit bill for them already this year? And then we would take them as a transfer and not even be able to bill for them. So there are some pieces in there that I think for us, we're a little bit more cautionary on a wait and see attitude than just blasting forward to either expand. I think we're going to take a look at making sure that our ship is pretty firm before we decide to take on more.
Yeah, I think you made some really fair points, Frank, and a lot of concerns or things that we're having to navigate as well at SCU. One thing that we've done is tried to make positions, and like I said, we're a smaller agency. Our department's about 15 of us. We've tried to make roles very specific, so that way you're not handling 10 different things as a PM, or as a director, as a senior. You have a very specific role that you're being held accountable for, and it takes it off the plate of other people, even though it's just a percentage of what they were doing previously. It has made things run a little bit smoother and has made this process a little bit less intimidating for some of the roles, more intimidating for others. And we also did so we have an agency-wide quality and compliance team, but we did shift a role from a program manager to a quality and compliance manager in-house, because you really have to have someone who understands the program being active in that role. And not that other quality and compliance folks don't, but you kind of have to have like boots on the ground and really understand the processes, within ODP. And because they're ever changing, it's just a little bit easier to have someone that close doing that work. But I think, we're also concerned about the billing aspect. We have hired, and our caseloads are manageable right now, but knowing that already, looking at the budget, we're projected to lose a lot of money. So the thought of hiring more, creating a bigger deficit preemptively is a concern.
Yeah, I would agree with Kate that if your caseload size, if you spent the last decade with the current system trying to drive caseload sizes down, to, the low 30s, promote supervisors and have, supervisor to SC levels at 1 to 5, we're in the same position. For this new system, you're basically overstaffed. So you're going to have to figure out, and you're going to lose a lot of money. We're going to lose a lot of money in that first year. So the stabilization payment from 26, 27, I've been trying to figure out how to understand that while we make sure we're right sized going into 27, 28, and 28, 29. The way I'm reading it, the stabilization payment is based on for 26, 27 is 25, 26. But then the 27, 28 stabilization payment is based on 26, 27, which I'm not sure what good that's going to do me because I've already lost all the money. So, unless you're going to go back to 25, 26 for the next 3 years, we're going to have to be right sized by 27, 28 in order to not start really losing a lot of money. So I think depending on your caseload sizes is going to depend on, which part of that balance sheet, if their ODP is going to ask people to give back money if you make more money than you were making before. But on the other hand, if you've driven caseload sizes down, you're going to spend some time trying to right size your staff.
So Mike, are you able, that would be a great question we have one more virtual office hour. Unfortunately, I am not the subject matter expert in relation to the stabilization payments. That would be our fiscal director, Jen Newell, and she is on those calls. We do have one, our last one is this week. It's actually tomorrow from 11 to 12:30. So that would be a great question and comment to bring up during
Sure.
those virtual office hours.
And I did plan to get on that. I tried to get on the
Okay.
last one and stuff happened that by the time I got on it, I think it had already wrapped up. But I think I did send an email to the performance-based contracting group, and their answer kind of just mimicked what was in the the webinar information that had already been put out, but it didn't really, because I asked the question that way, and they probably didn't have an additional answer. But that's kind of the question that for folks like us is that, how fast do you have to get to a system, or how much money can you lose after ODP takes the training wheels off before we're really, really struggling? Our hope is that if the stabilization payments go for a period of time, we can right size our staff with attrition and make some adjustments, and we can increase our caseloads because we know it's probably going to be, instead of 1 to 30, we're probably going to need to be 1 to 40. And, retraining the staff and having them understand, the new system is looking at things differently, and how they support individuals is going to be different to some degree. That, the things that we were doing in the past, that, our feeling was doing good customer service was getting the caseload sizes as low as we could, paying staff at, kind of an elevated level for our area worked really well. But this system kind of changes that to some degree, that we're going to have to make those adjustments. The more time we have, the better off we think we can do the job. But like I said, I was a little confused as to how that 3-year stabilization payment works. So I'm going to try to get on tomorrow and ask that question.
Yeah, that would be a great idea. And like, what SCO? It'd be great if you guys can tell me. I'm trying to put names with SCOs, as
Sure.
in this role.
Sure.
So
North Star Services.
I'm sorry, North Star Services.
North Star, yeah.
Okay.
Primarily in Blair County.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Devin. It's Jessica Fenton. How are you?
Good, Jessica. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. My question was, does ODP have a plan once they stop the stabilization payments after 3 years?
Jessica, I do not know how to answer that question. Like I said, stabilization payments, it's very siloed. It's a fiscal department thing. Yeah, that would be a great question for the office hours tomorrow. But I can also take it back if you can't get on and ask that question, and we can get a response to you.
Thanks, Devin.
Yeah.
Devin, if I could step in, sorry, my camera doesn't want to activate, but going back to some of the things that we've talked about thus far, so the extension, I am certainly happy to make that request to Kristen. So what I kind of like folks to do, if you don't mind, I know, Jessica, you put that in there, a couple people endorsed it. If that's something that you feel strongly about, if you don't mind endorsing that, putting a note in there, yes, extension sounds good. I'd like to be able to quantify that a little bit. And then for a lot of these issues, Devin, I think it's good for you to be able to kind of articulate things. I don't want to give kind of a laundry list because, you've heard a lot here and I'm sure you'll take those back. Um, with respect to financial, we're hearing about that a lot. I think what would be helpful in our talk yesterday, I know there was some discussion from Leslie and Kate about ratios and target ratios, and I'm hearing that again today. If you don't mind, those of you who are with us today from the SCOs, if you have in mind a target ratio, and Mike, I think that was you, maybe 1 to 40. I've seen some other things in the chat, like what you think this means, this model means that you have a ratio that you think you have to meet. I think that would be a good thing for me to communicate rather than just say it's going to be a big hit financially, to kind of look at it and tie it to some of the concerns I'm also hearing about quality. So if you don't mind doing that, and if it's something that you can do with regard to, hey, we're at this particular ratio, but we think we need to be here. Any of that kind of information, kind of those three things are what I'm thinking that I would want to follow up with to Kristen directly summarizing. We've had this, thank you, Devin, for being here. And, you'll bring some things back, I'm sure, to Lauren and to Jen and Kristen. But, we want to give you the opportunity to sort of frame that, think about what you've heard here today. But I would intend for the group to sort of make that direct request if that's something that you want done. So I'll just stop there, let you guys continue the conversation. But again, thank you. Please continue to express anything that you have questions about, and particularly about eventually, this has to get turned in. If right now we're talking November 1, but while Devin is here on technical questions within the scope, I think again it's a great opportunity to sort of ask those things based on some of the feedback we've gotten. So thanks everyone.
Can I ask, like, I'm seeing a lot of in the chat, it looks like 40 seems to be the golden number here. And that's a lot. I'm curious, is it because of the need to increase the caseloads? What are the reasons? Is it it's hard to get qualified sports coordination, get them to stay? Is it because of revenue? Is it because of hitting those marks with the A and B activities across the I'm just curious as to what is it that you're seeing that you're going to need to increase the caseloads? Like, why is that?
Devin, if I could, when I run the numbers, as I said, what has happened for the last decade plus is we've paid people based upon, and I think the numbers that I have, like from my waiver, the folks that we support in waiver, what we're billing per waiver person is closer to probably, I would say closer to $5,000. And you're going to end up in this new system for waiver folks that are CLW or consolidated. We're going to bill at the max $4,000, and that's assuming we can bill for everybody. So we've based what we're paying people and adding new supervisors to get our supervisor to SC levels to 1 to 5. So you base your salary, you base your supervision level on that what we've been able to bill over the years. And now ODP has adjusted that to a new level with a max cap that now there's really no way to make those numbers work at the SC level at what we're paying them. So if I'm going to keep paying people the same rate without changing benefits and a whole bunch of things, I have to figure out how to maintain that dollar figure to keep those, what we have, between several counties is 26 staff and 7 supervisors, not counting my office support staff. So now I'm trying to figure out, if with 26 SCs at a caseload size of 1 to 28, There's no way to make that work. So what am I going to have to do over the next 3 years? And that's why I said the stabilization payments really will make a difference, because obviously, my hope is that we can train staff well in the new system and they feel like they can do the job well, but we're still going to have, no matter how good they're doing, if you can't make the amount of revenue to match what you currently do, we've got to make that adjustment. So what we're doing is we're trying to figure out over the next 2 to 3 years, how many more customers would we need to bring on that we're going to support, as well as trying to figure out what's the right size number of staff. Because if I keep all 26 people, I'm probably going to have to find new customers at a pretty big level that I may not be able to get to, even if I expand into other counties. So I think that's where I'm currently at, is trying to figure out how much time do I have to make this right. To make sure that, with my board of directors, that, you may have some money in the kitty, but after the stabilization payment runs out, how far can you go? And we don't want to get to the point where, you get to 27, 28 and you're trying to slash 3, 4, 5 people. That's what we'd like to avoid. We'd like to kind of do this organically, with new customers and the stabilization payments kind of building a bridge to that. That's the way I'm looking at it, if that helps.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks, Mike.
I think a big thing, and we did touch on this yesterday when we talked, was the necessity to essentially feel like you have to take almost every case. There is that kind of buffer, but even if not just strictly based off of the metrics, but as well as the need to sustain yourself, we would have to, just because of the deficit that's going to be incurred for it seems like a lot of folks, you have to bring in revenue then in a different way, which subsequently leads to an increase in caseloads. And the concern that I'm seeing in the chat as well is that leads to a decrease in quality. I've always compared ODP, I've kind of worked in all SC roles, it's about 1 case to 2 in any other type of social service setting. It's just very hands-on and intensive. You have a whole team that you're working with instead of one person or only 2 services. There's hundreds of options in HCSIS. So just trying to make sure that we at least break even without compromising quality.
Sure.
I think one of the biggest shifts is it's very hard for us to look at that we're getting paid for what the individual is instead of getting paid for the service that we provide. And that, I think, is a great shift for us to kind of do. So, and it is new, even system wide. I can't think of another ODP service that it just gets paid this flat rate, period, whether or not they're doing it 5 days a week, 1 day a week, 5 minutes a week. It does make things a little bit different. So we do have to kind of look at that. And again, the quality aspect of it, we're trying to ramp up and get good quality. We don't want caseloads to get too high because, in all honesty, it will slip quality because individuals will have too many people to juggle. So we have to watch that aspect. But the other thing is also we have to keep our doors open. So we're going to have to make at least enough money, I know in our case, to break even. And if we don't, we're not going to be around much longer.
Frank, what SC are you with?
Staunton Clinic.
Okay.
Frank, there's a comment in the chat from Helen that I think goes along with what you just said. Helen reported that having rates that are not the same for all individuals being supported is ultimately the issue. And you're absolutely correct. And the other thing is you all have no idea who's going to be calling you or knocking on your door. So you may have people with minimal support needs, and you may have people with very, very complex, medical or behavioral support needs. You have no idea when that person first calls or knocks on the door, how much time is going to be needed to be invested in that individual to obtain the services that they need. So it's really, really hard to try to balance your caseloads. It's almost impossible to try to balance the caseloads when you don't know, and not just new people, but the people that you're already supporting. A couple of those people with Down syndrome, dementia, cancer, right? All of a sudden, those people require a lot more time, intensive supports, not just for them, but for their families. And all of a sudden, that just shifts the work that one support coordinator may have to do. So I think you're absolutely right. And what Helen said is really the crux of the matter, that having rates that are not the same for all individuals is at the bottom of what you're all saying.
If I could add, I feel like I'm yakking a lot here. I apologize. So, we have when you're talking about the shift, the other thing that we were talking about at our management team was we don't know. I know you're still building the system as far as the payment system goes and as far as what the narrative we're going to have to add. So what does that monthly billing time savings look like? So we're going to try to run some simulations as best as we can, even without the actual platform to do it from, to try to figure out what happens to staff time if we don't do 15-minute units and we instead do a monthly, let's pick a couple of individuals for each SC, because when you're trying to figure out, and you're right, if I say 1 to 40 for a caseload, some of it I'm guessing because I don't know exactly what the time savings is going to be. And I think the other variable that I'm sure all the SCOs would note is that every county that you work in, every AE operates differently in terms of their expectations for whether it's ISPs, monitoring, incident management. They all do it a little bit differently. There's basics, but some counties for the ISPs, there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of changes, a lot of things that they want to see differently that the SC has to manage. But if you're in a different county that doesn't, I want to say doesn't have as much back and forth on completion of the ISPs, incident management is maybe less, less of a focus. All of those things are kind of variables that we're all trying to put into the mix to figure out what can we do and what could I expect from my staff. And they're all kind of a little concerned as well, because we can't give them a great answer in terms of how the time savings will add up to allow you to say, oh yeah, you can support 40 people instead of 28. So we're kind of guessing a little bit with a lot of these. So I think when people are trying to fill out the form for the portal, those are some of the things like trying to provide good info to you as well, that in the next 15 days we're all trying to boil it down and get it to you. So like I said, I just think there's a lot right now that everybody's trying to deal with at the same time, knowing I got to give you a report by October 31st, so kind of where we're going when we all feel kind of like, okay, I'm not really sure where I'm going. So
I can certainly appreciate that. Yeah, like Patrick said, he can certainly talk to Kristen about the possibility of extending it. I really honestly do not know that where they'll land with that, but anything can be, proposed to her. So,
Devin, I think you help by saying the expectation is that somebody's not going to have a totally, 20-page summary of how they're going to do that. I think that helped me a little bit. Your expectations are not that we're going to have that.
yeah,
Just a
absolutely.
good summary of how we're going to do it based on what we know.
Yep.
That
That's
helps.
all you can do, right? That's all you can do. So then that's all we're looking for. And we just want to know that the ball is rolling. You got the system. You're thinking about how this could potentially look and work.
Thank you.
That's a great note to end on, a positive note. Thanks everybody for joining us today. As we mentioned, we'll be doing a follow-up with the recording and the slide deck. And again, thanks everybody for joining. We'll have any Patrick had to drop off, so we'll follow up with Kristen on some of these questions. We'll make sure we get the chat. There's been great comments in there. So again, thanks. Hope you all have a great day, and we'll talk again soon. Take care.